Good afternoon. Welcome to a lunchtime special from the Academy. We haven't stopped doing the free CPD, so once a month we are doing at least one free CPD show to anybody who cares to register. This is an additional one in our calendar, and today we're going to be looking at online diaries, online clinic notes, and to help me with that I have got in for the second time Jamie Purdy. Jamie, hi. Good to have you with us. Isn't it great? We can shake hands again.
It really is nice.
I think that's legal these days. Yeah. So Jamie was on the show just over 2 years ago, in fact, when he came and talked to us about the Jane app, the clinic software which we use in my own clinic. He's not here specifically to talk about Jane today, but to talk about the benefits and the perils of using online systems. And what we'd appreciate from you is your feedback on the systems you're using, if you are using Jane, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, what you think it should do to improve, and any upsets or traumas that you've had through using online notes, and perhaps Jamie will be able to help us out in how you get around those things. So, over 2 years, Jamie, has Jane changed in that time?
We've done nothing. No, we've done lots in the last couple of years, yes. So since I was last here, in fact, I think we've rolled out a lot of features that are kind of specific to COVID and the new world in which we find ourselves. So one thing, especially at the start of the pandemic, was this COVID screening questionnaires that suddenly every company in the world was asking people to complete. I'm very pleased to say at the very start of the pandemic, Jane was able to roll out this specific feature to kind of help people automate that process, which was quite nice.
So a lot of people who are using clinic software, they're going to know what you mean by that. Those who aren't already using this sort of system, presumably this is just a template which you call up or you send to patients?
Yeah, exactly that. So it's the kind of, if you aren't using this kind of system, you may, every single person that turned up, you may have to ask them a few questions. Have you traveled recently? Do you have a temperature? Those kind of questions. And this feature would allow you to fully automate that process. So it would be a kind of an email template that you can put together and just ensure that before every single appointment there's an email sent out with a link for someone to click, open this questionnaire and tick.
Okay, so you've got that on the screen now, have you?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, so let's have a look at that on our own screen. And
So I'll back up 1 second just to take a look at that. But this kind of thing, so you can piece together this email where you can choose the title of the email, so mandatory COVID-19 screenings, kind of our default title that you can see in there. A nice little welcome introduction, the reason that this email's been sent, and then piecing together some of this default language is slightly Americanized, like do you have a fever rather than a temperature, but it's just a nice tool that you can kind of customize and just make sure that you're asking those questions.
So if I was someone who's not using clinic software, am I likely to find any providers of software who don't give you this sort of thing these days?
Yes, I'd say quite a few. I know this is something that a lot of people still do manually, so we've got lots of people that scramble every single evening. They're manually texting the patients, or their front desk are calling the patients and asking the questions and leaving voicemails and then hoping to get calls back. And so lots of people haven't found a solution for this other than just a lot of manual work, or building your own email templates, maybe something like that, whereas this is something we were just able to add, so you can set this up. And
if I decided I didn't want question 4 or question 5, could I take it off?
Yeah, totally. So this little ellipsis we can see at the end, these 3 little dots, this is how you can kind of customize the order, the layout. So we've got this little rubbish bin icon. If you say, actually, don't need that question, you can get rid of that and it's gone. Every single bit of language on here is fully customizable as well. So you can click to edit the templates, rename the questions, relabel the questions, add additional options. It's really nice. And once you put in the 5-10 minutes to set this up, it's a huge time saver to avoid those phone calls, those manual emails and checking at the door.
You said earlier on that some clinic owners are sitting down of an evening manually texting all their patients, and then you switched cunningly to emails. Can Jane do texts to patients?
We can do text message reminders to patients at the moment. So that's they're pretty simple actually. I can show you what they look like. They're free of charge, so we don't charge for these reminders. So we've got an example here. This 2-hour text message. I'll preview this just to show the kind of thing that we can send out. So it's going to be short and sweet, your appointment's in a couple of hours or 24 hours. That's what we can offer at the moment. We are working on a couple of new features
That's actually, I mean, I imagine that the bigger providers, I'm trying to make sure that this isn't a sales plug for
Yes,
Jane,
absolutely.
because I mean, people might not want to use Jane, or they might have a different system
Yeah.
already. But I imagine the bigger providers are offering this. But certainly the system we use in the academy for contacting our members and so on does not allow us to send text messages free of charge.
Okay, I think Jane's, in fact, as all the software that I'm aware of anyway, I don't believe anyone offers it free of charge. I believe most places are like, you buy bundles of credits, like 10,000 credits, or and then the more you buy, the kind of cheaper it becomes per message. But with Jane, we just kind of roll it into the subscription for people. So they're pretty basic. There's not loads of fancy features related to text messages with Jane, but for appointment reminders, free of charge, and they're going to send us notifications.
Patients desperately want lengthy messages, do they?
Some people may do, but most people likely not. And we just include it in the subscription cost, so you never need to worry about that kind of extra bill at the end of the month.
What do you find are the main attractions of clinic software for osteopaths, chiropractors and so on?
Being able to, so a lot of the work that's been done manually on paper over the years, and it's one of those things, I think the longer you take to make a transition, the bigger that transition becomes, and it's kind of a worrying thing to switch away from something you've done for 10, 15, 20 years plus. So I think when people realize the power of being able to just use your mobile phone, if you want to completely run your practice, to write your clinical notes on there, to kind of store your clinical notes, check emails, reminders, all of that can be done from your smartphone or from a laptop like I am now, just through your web browser. It's absolutely huge, and the amount of time, I'd say, is the big thing that
it's got to be quite a deterrent to people, though, that if someone's been in practice for 20 years and all their notes are on bits of paper, to suddenly switch over to clinic software is going to be a real challenge, isn't it? Because you're running then you're running two systems.
Yeah.
And somewhere you've still got to have all those paper records in case so-and-so comes back after 6, 7, 8 years, months or 2 years or something, and you've got to go and look up the records.
No, that's very true, and it's something we hear a lot, and it's most people that we speak to who are in that kind of situation, they reach a point where they realize it's just not sustainable anymore. Like maybe they're running out of filing cabinet space in their spare bedroom, and they realize the notes are just piling up, and it's hard. And then you've even got I don't like to speak about worst case scenarios, but if something catches fire, physically those notes are gone, those records are gone. Whereas having an online system where the notes are completely stored online securely.
So can you then, given that we all know how much more secure online systems are, except for the fact they're a whole lot less secure, aren't they? Reassure those people who are GDPR cautious that everything that's necessary is done to secure all this detail from the unwanted prying eyes of someone.
Yeah, absolutely. So all the data stored in secure data centers online. It's the most simple way to explain it is we use the same kind of level of security that your bank would use to kind of encrypt financial transactions. So all the data stored in UK data centers. So for all of our UK and European accounts, everything's stored in the UK. But the nice thing is that even, again, speaking of worst case scenario, if your paper notes catch fire, they're gone. If something horrible happens at one of these data centers, they're structured in such a way that we just flip your account to another physical location in a GDPR compliant data center. So you don't lose access to your account, your notes are still there, and you can kind of pick up exactly where you left off.
Now, I did ask you last time what happens when your power supply or your internet goes down at your own clinic.
Yeah, that's one of those things.
Pen and paper still work.
They do, and the nice thing is when your internet's restored again, you can scan copies of your paper notes into Jane, which is quite nice, or into any other online software, I'm sure. But yeah, it is one of those things. If your internet goes down, your internet goes down. For online systems, you would not be able to access it through that device on that internet connection. Most people and most networks, hopefully these days, have a kind of backup mobile phone connection at the very least, which is the nice thing because Jane's web-based, there's nothing to download and install. So if your hardwired internet connection goes down, hopefully you've got 4G.
Do you find people are still keen to have a local library of records, a local database, which is updated with the online whenever it's able, but gives them that access to all their records if the internet fails? And I know internet's failing is becoming more and more of a rarity these days, but it's still a worry in people's minds, isn't it?
I think it's a personal preference. Most people Again, this is just from personal experience, so I may be a small sample size of people who've explained this to me. Most people see it as a relief that they no longer need to worry about those physical records, those offline copies, because your internet can go down if you've got your whole life stored on one laptop. What if that laptop breaks? What if the hard drive's corrupted? It's a balancing act, I think, for a lot of people. For those that do wish to store offline copies, it is possible to get your notes out of these online systems, so you could store them on a secure hard drive or in another location if you choose. But generally speaking, most people, once they get their head around the idea that they're no longer writing the notes, they're no longer having to physically store them, I think it's a relief for a few people.
If a patient comes to see me, and sorry to bang on about this one, if a patient comes to see me and my internet mysteriously has dropped out, can I still use the Jane app and let it update at a later date?
This is a tricky one to demonstrate because the internet is active. As long as you'd opened the record and started typing their notes, you'll see, we've got this Jane logo in our Jane blue colour, we call it, across the top. You'd notice this colour changes and it would say you've lost your internet connection, and it would be attempting to reconnect. As long as you don't close that browser session, everything you type, you would be able to continue to type, and as soon as the connection's restored, it would very quickly update in real time with the server.
I'm sorry we can't shut down our internet.
Yeah, exactly.
It would defeat the object, wouldn't it?
Yes.
So, and earlier on, and you were talking about the sort of features, the sort of benefits that someone ought to be looking for from an online system, and you started off with, I forget what it was now, but it was one of the Jane features. What are the latest sort of developments in online clinic software?
So lots of people, so not having to install something physical is a massive thing. Being able to manage it on your mobile device, on any device that you choose, is a massive thing. We've seen it really interesting since the start of the pandemic, a massive switch in a lot of businesses where they offer a lot of telehealth services now. So a lot of maybe an online consultation might be an initial video consultation rather than in person. That's become massive, and we've seen so many clinics fully embrace this totally new way of working. Yeah. I think at the start of the pandemic, it was a difficult thing to do like an initial osteopathic assessment without physically seeing someone and
so how does it
seeing
work
how
through
they
an
move.
online system then?
Yeah, so it's similar to, I'm sure everyone's familiar with that Zoom and Teams and stuff at this point now. So again, not to bang on about Jane, but we do have a free telehealth system that we've built into the software. So it would allow you to schedule a one-on-one video call with a patient. Right. You can share your screen.
And is that video then stored?
No. So the way that works, it's the type of connection's a peer-to-peer connection. So all that happens at the start of the call, the patient gets a link that they can click, the practitioner gets a link that they can click, and it creates a secure connection between the two. Mm-hmm. So none of that data is stored. It completely bypasses all Jane servers. Right. It's not possible for anyone to record that video session and store the file afterwards. Okay. So for privacy reasons, we were
and so
very
you
careful.
Still have to write the notes up afterwards,
yes.
Which is perfectly reasonable.
Yes, absolutely. But that's been an interesting change, I think, whereas pre-pandemic we had a few clinics, again from personal experience, who offered those online appointments, but that was their business, where a lot of people now are in this mix of virtual and in-person appointments.
Yeah. And I guess actually that's something which is probably worth considering if you're about to buy an online software package, isn't it? Because it is much more a run of the day-to-day thing to do video consults.
Yeah, and a lot of patients are kind of expecting that now as well. I know, I'm not sure about GP surgeries for everyone, but I know my local GP surgery switched to a lot of telephone and video appointments before you can actually get in to see a GP. And I think a lot of the kind of allied healthcare sector seems to be going a similar route.
Yeah, I know. I think our practitioners in my clinic would resist the idea of doing a full appointment, certainly the osteopaths and sports therapists, where they'd probably resist the idea of doing a full appointment through a video session. But we do free consultations as well, where we don't offer any treatment, and then some of those could easily be done through a video session, and it would be more convenient for the patient and for us. A couple of questions or observations have come in. Visby has asked what the online case history form looks like.
Oh, so this is the fun stuff we can get into now. This is awesome. So it looks essentially like however you'd like the online case history form to look. So I'm just going to pull up an example of a fake patient here in our demo site. So this is kind of the front profile screen of the patient. We've got their contact information, date of birth, age. We've got a little bit of information about upcoming appointments. We've got some financial and appointment information along the top as well.
Do you know, it's silly of me, but next to the date of birth it says in 2 months, and I always think that's a really nice thing to be reminded of, because in the past, so often, the birthday's in a couple of days' time, and I just haven't twigged.
Yes.
I would possibly notice that if I called.
Yeah, let's see if we've got a quick example just to hop away. I will come back to this question, but it is, some people absolutely love this. I don't think we'll have an example. If it is the patient's birthday on the day of their appointment, the appointment gets wrapped up in a little bow in the diary. So there's a little bow like a present on there. I think that's quite nice. But yes, very good point. That's just easily accessible on the front screen of the patient's profile.
So we've got the front screen, we've got profile, settings, charts, which chart is case history, isn't it?
Yes, so that's kind of the medical notes.
Billing and so on. And billing, of course, is a useful thing to be doing online rather than having to take stuff at a reception desk.
Yes, absolutely. So I'll click into this chart area now just to show what this looks like. So by default, what we're seeing here is the most recent entry that was written by our practitioner. So the practitioner's name over to the side here. We've got their notes. We do condense it a little bit just to save a little bit of space, but you can click to expand that entry to read the full entry. Right, and so
just you're scrolling through that very quickly.
Yeah.
We've got chief complaint, we've got whatever adjustments were made, exercises that were prescribed, but this is a case history form which is specific to this practitioner or this practice, isn't it? You can have whatever you liked.
Yes, indeed. So I've got in full Blue Peter mode, we've got this one that we made earlier, everything but the kitchen sink is a nice example that we use just to show how flexible and how customizable these notes are. Some people are perfectly content with text boxes and a couple of ticky boxes. You could absolutely build something like that for yourself. This example we've got here, so we've got chief complaint, like you mentioned. We have vitals down here. We've got note fields.
We can draw on this, can we?
I can embarrass myself and draw a smiley face on this, or try and draw something a little more professional here, but you can sketch over the top of here, which is quite nice. This little finger pointer tool that I click as well, that allows you to put these little note boxes with a kind of corresponding mark next to it, so you can write notes specific to each of those marks that you put on the body there. That image can be replaced with any image that someone chooses as well, which is quite nice, and you can still sketch and annotate over the top. For anyone using paper notes or with letters and things they want to scan in, like we mentioned, we've got this file image upload area so they can scan in previous copies of the patient's notes. I'll scroll through a couple of the things. So checkboxes, we've got some clever options down here. So this is, if you can spend the time to put something like this together, it's a massive time saver. So options list as checkboxes in our example is walking, running, weightlifting with a few different options. So what that allows us to do, let's say, so you see as I tick a few different options, this sentence kind of types itself out as if I've written that as a sentence. When I save this note, all of these tick boxes are hidden from view, and it's just going to show the sentence that we've kind of programmed in. So if you have questionnaires like this, where you might ask the same kind of questions over and over again during an initial consultation maybe, it's a way that you can build a tool like this.
And I take it this automated sentence, I can now edit that to be specific to what they say, can I?
Yes, correct. And you can always add stuff to these notes while they're in draft as well. So you've always got the option down at the bottom here to add an item. So if there's a section you hadn't thought of, or you just need to add some additional notes, you can just pop down, add a new note box and put some.
And if I've had a patient and I haven't needed, or I haven't done any drawings or anything like that, can I take them out so that they don't take up so much space when I read through the cases?
Totally. It's like this sketch box down here, we might not need this, so that the same three little dots, the ellipsis over to the side, and we can just delete that section off. It's not going to remove it from the template you've created, but it will remove it from that note specifically. I can show you the template builder as well, so just to show where you would actually go here. So I'm signed in as this staff member called demo owner and the account owner, and I'm clicking this chart templates option below my name here, and this allows me to build my own templates from scratch. We do have a template library I can demonstrate as well, which see Osteopathic, we've got over 450 specific templates for osteopathy that have been shared in here, which is quite nice.
Right, now you mentioned this last time you were in. These are not 465 templates that you at Jane have invented. No. These have all been shared by other clinic owners, and I could look through those and pick the one that I like to be my default template.
Yes, absolutely. And I should say, for anyone who creates their own templates and doesn't wish to share them, they're never shared by default. It's something that the practitioner or the clinic chooses to do.
6,000 chiropractic templates.
Yes.
I suspect that reflects the balance of customers, being that largely this is North American, this system, isn't it?
Yes, it is. So Jane's very large in Canada now and quite big in the US and still growing in the UK, we'd say. But chiropractic, at least initially, was Jane's largest discipline by far. We've got a few others that are catching up now, but yeah, that's definitely
But also there's a lot of
in here.
overlap between American chiropractors, UK osteopaths, UK chiropractors, I think, as well.
Yes, and that's the nice thing, that if there's a keyword you'd like to search for, instead of clicking in here, like a specific type of template, you could pop that keyword in and see if a template it may exist in a different discipline. But let's just click in and we'll pick the first one that shows up under osteopathy. So someone shared a patient intake they've created, and we can see here that we've got almost 600 people using a version of this template. So you can preview that, scroll through and see all the hard work they've done, and then chosen to share this with you, which is quite nice if you're building your own templates and you don't know where to start. And then we can add this in to our own account. And then you've got the option from this point to completely customize it, add things, remove things, change the language, whatever you need to do, reorder things. But sometimes it's nice if you are just staring at a blank screen and you really have no idea where to start with something. The template library is great. It's,
Absolutely.
It gives you that
so much
starting
easier
point.
to edit something than to create it from scratch.
Yes, totally.
We have some other questions in here. Matthew has asked whether Jane can manage migration of existing records from another provider. And what else does he say? He realises that his existing provider would probably charge me to release the data. So does Jane consider his records to be their data, as some do? In other words...
Oh, yes, you own your data. So each Jane account, so as we see here, I'm the account owner. Each Jane account has one account owner. That person's considered the owner of all of the data within the account. So if you were ever to leave Jane, which obviously we don't want unless it just really doesn't work for you, you're totally free to request your data at any time. You can export your data at any time, free of charge. We don't lock you into lengthy contracts.
Regarding Matthew's question about migrating from another provider, that's going to be an interesting one for a lot of people, isn't it?
Yes.
I know my clinic migrated from PPS because they just failed to move with the times. Sorry, PPS, but it's just a fact of life that everything else is now much more 21st century than what they're offering. How easy is it to do that?
Yeah, so really it depends on the data that you can get out of your existing software. The vast majority of software that we're aware of, you're able to get, say, your entire patient list as an Excel file or a kind of a spreadsheet file. The same with appointments in the diary. So we can bring over 8 years of appointment history plus all future appointments that are booked in. And then if you've been writing clinical notes in your previous software, providing you can get that information out of there, and the process will differ from each company.
Have you ever experienced people having problems getting the data out of other providers?
Yes, I wouldn't like to single out any other providers. Previously, yes, as Matthew mentioned there, some providers will charge for that service, and quite a lot of money in some cases. Other providers in the past, they've provided the notes and the data in a format that just isn't really 21st century compatible, in my view.
Going on to that, I mean, your team at Jane spent a lot of time helping us at my clinic migrate from PPS because the stuff that came out from them was in a strange format, as I recall, and you had to move all the boxes around so that they all went in, mapped into the right fields.
And thanks to that as well, we now have a lot more experience dealing with that kind of migration, so our team know what to expect from the data. But generally speaking, most companies that we're aware of these days will provide a clinic owner or an account owner with a full usable copy of the data, and as long as it's in a standard format like Excel files or PDFs for kind of clinical notes, we can migrate all of that over.
But it's a great point that Matthew brings up, isn't it? And forgetting Jane, covering up the logo on your shirt, if anyone is going to take on clinic software, they need to look at how much help they're going to get, how easy it is to put their paper records or their existing online records into Jane. And that's well worth having a long discussion with the provider. Yeah. And also, it's I don't know anything much about other providers than Jane, because of course you're what we use in my own clinic, which is probably why you're so keen to come and be interviewed today. But many people are keen to help you before you've actually paid your money, and they'll promise you all sorts of things, and when you've paid your money you suddenly find that help is limited. I have to say, I think we got an enormous amount of help from you guys when we migrated from PPS. Yeah. So thank you for that.
No, my pleasure.
I don't know how you can know that in advance, but I hope that's satisfied Matthew's curiosity. Jolly Local One. There's a thing about the names on our question system. Some of them are real names and some of them are made up, I think, by the computer. Would the patient not think it worrying having their notes on on a mobile. Putting notes on mobile, it says here. I don't know whether that means...
As in being able to access the note, like the practitioner can sign in on the mobile phone and access the notes potentially. I mean, I can understand the question, I suppose, that you think of going into a clinic and they've maybe got a computer or a laptop that's physically installed in the clinic versus someone walking around with their phone in their pocket. We do have, and again, this isn't just specific to Jane, most companies will have copies of the kind of data security and storage policies that can be shared with patients, like privacy policies and things like that. But I think a lot of it just comes down to a mobile device feels more, it's more mobile, it's in the name, I suppose. People can carry it around with them anywhere, but the data is still protected behind the same kind of username and password. It's still backed up in exactly the same way as if you were accessing the data on a laptop in clinic on your plugged in internet connection. It's just a slightly different way to think about that, I think. But we certainly do have some guidance, Jane-specific guidance about that data access that can be shared with patients that goes into it in a bit more depth.
Well, I guess it's a presentational thing, isn't it? I mean, frankly, I would not like to be seen by a patient using my mobile phone as my main point of data entry in my clinic. I wouldn't think that looked terribly professional, but it's not compulsory, is it?
No, absolutely not.
No. Lots of people write their notes up after the appointment. Well, you could, if you have to do it on a mobile phone, which I would hate to do as well, you could do it then.
Yeah, that's the way that most people tend to use the mobile phone with Jane. They've got their main device, whether it's an iPad, a laptop, a hardwired PC or desktop that they have, and the mobile phone's often used just to check the diary quickly or maybe book an appointment. Yes, but it's a very valid question, and we do have more information about it, Jane-specific information on our website.
Same person, Jolly Local 2, this one says, so maybe it's not the same person. I don't know how the system works at the moment. Says, how would they write down their own drawn abbreviations? I guess they mean an R in a circle for right or...
Okay, so a couple of different things I can demonstrate here. So if there are little symbols that you use, we don't have a key for these symbols because we found lots of people use these symbols in very different ways. But I'm just going to quickly, I realize I'm clicking through this quite quickly here. But you see every note field that I type into, this extra line of symbols appears, including the R in the circle here. We don't provide a key. As I say, lots of people use these differently, but if it is symbols like this, you'd be free to use these pre-existing symbols. If you've got lists, and this is another really cool feature actually, I'm just going to head to my staff profile. We've got this feature called phrases, which didn't exist the last time I was here. We've got some very professional examples of whiskey cocktails in our treatment notes there. If there are things that you type over and over again, or phrases that you may use over and over again, or even a full paragraph that you maybe just need to tweak a little, you can actually build a list of shortcuts that then you would type this shortcut into your notes, and this entire phrase would populate, which is quite nice. So
every time I write bones in your system, it's going to come up with wire skeletons, so cool.
It will indeed, yes. Let's demonstrate that now. Was this one I created, I believe, so it's /
it's a forward slash. I was going to say that could be really confusing.
And then you can select that, or you can choose not to use that at all. I think we do have some more official looking ones rather than whiskey cocktails and things like that, but it's just quite a nice feature if there are things that you do frequently write over and over again. You don't want to have to copy and paste it or type it out every single time. That can save quite a bit of time.
Definitely. And one of the other things that's going to save a lot of time is being able to read the notes, because you can't read my handwriting. Even I can't read my handwriting. So, good. Let's turn back to some more of these questions. Vispy again says, can Jane send treatment booster emails, i.e. after 1 month, 3 months, a year, etc.? And does it work anything like a CRM?
So it's not really a CRM. If you want to do it,
we ought to explain what that is for the people who are
so that's like a customer relationship manager type system.
Which is the sort of thing which sends automated emails and allows you to insert names by a code rather than having to do, so you can 1,000 out all individually addressed.
Yes.
You may have got 1 or 2 of those from me, who knows?
Exactly that. And so if you'd like to manage something like that in a fully automated way, or as automated as possible, we do integrate with a company called MailChimp, which people may be familiar with. Some people may not be familiar with MailChimp.
Is that the only one you integrate with?
That's the only integration we have. So if you'd like to fully automate that, MailChimp would be the way forward. If you want to manage it in Jane and have a little bit more control as to when these emails would be sent, our demo site's not the best to demonstrate this, but we do have this report that you can use to pull through. These are all the people booked within a certain date range who haven't yet booked a follow-up appointment, you would then be able to, you'll see here this person's very keen and or very injured, they've got 35 upcoming appointments, so not the best example, but you would be able to schedule these emails to go out in the future. So let's say we saw the patient for an initial assessment last month, we haven't booked in for a future appointment yet, we could come in here and tell Jane, okay, we're going to suggest the patient comes back at the end of February, we'd like this email to be sent out maybe a week before the end of February, and we're going to suggest they come to see Amy, our staff member, for a 60-minute massage here. You can pop a little personalised message in at the bottom there, this message to patient section as well.
So this is doing it not entirely by hand, but you've physically got to go and pick the patient and do that. Would MailChimp be able to do this better?
Automatically. So if you wanted to just set it and let it run and not think about it and not worry about it, then yes. So what MailChimp will do is, I'll just demonstrate the fields that we pull through to MailChimp here. Oops. So if you can see these fields here, this is what's going to be pushed from Jane over to MailChimp. Last visit date and last visit description are two important fields. So again, if you've never used MailChimp before, this might not mean a lot to you, but MailChimp's really clever in that you could say this last visit date, if it's been X number of days, weeks, months since this person had a visit with us, we want to send this email campaign to a patient. So MailChimp would allow you to just set that based on a specific date and then just let it run for everyone who meets that criteria.
And of course, for those people who aren't familiar with CRMs like MailChimp, you can customize the text. You can have it say, dear sir, dear madam, dear mister. You can have it default to a hello there if it doesn't know the name, which it will obviously from Clinic Software. It's so flexible at what you can send out, except of course that for everyone whose visit date exceeds that distance, then it's going to send exactly the same message, isn't it? Which is actually quite nice because then it's fairly predictable.
Yes, so MailChimp, very, very clever, not affiliated with Jane in any way other than the fact that we do provide this integration so you can push these patient details through.
So again, I mean, if you're going to pick an online system, and I imagine the others will have something like this going on, and you are keen to send out those reminders, and it is worth checking that they do something like this.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of questions here. So several people apparently have asked about signing the notes, or rather not signing the notes. We're not supposed to retrospectively amend notes, but how does that work with online material?
Yeah, so it's very similar to I like to think of it as an almost a physical stamp that you're putting on a piece of paper. So Jane is very insistent about timestamps. So if I just start a new random note in here, so you'll notice that it's still in draft. At the moment, we've got this little unlocked padlock icon on here. Jane will never automatically lock your notes after 24 hours or anything like that. It's always up to the practitioner to come back and sign off on their own notes. As soon as I hit this sign button down here, Jane's going to ask me, you ready to sign it? Are you sure? I'll say yes. And that padlock has then locked itself over here. So it now has this
signed by demo owner on the 31st of January at 1:42.
If you do need to make an amendment, you'll notice there is an amendment button here. So only the person who actually wrote this note and locked it originally is able to come in and amend a note. And if they add an amendment, they can't remove any of the information that they previously signed and locked. But they can add some new information in here, and we'll have a second timestamp to show.
I have to say, I've done that on Jane in the past when I've actually opened a new chart entry to say, I don't know, I got the last one wrong. I didn't mean left, I meant right, or something like that. And be able to do that there.
Yes.
Which in the horrible event that someone is investigated, it means that they've got a clear evidence trail for what happened.
Absolutely.
What if we have? No, let me phrase this differently. I am aware of clinics where some practitioners have not signed their notes.
Okay.
And so the clinic principal has chased them up after, it could be days or longer, saying you haven't signed these notes, they've got to be signed. Is there a record kept on Jane as to when the note was first drafted, or is it only dated when they sign it?
Oh, that's a good question, actually. One to which I do not know the answer. Let's have a look. I don't know that we do keep a timestamp of when it was originally drafted, however.
But of course you will know when the appointment was, and therefore, and that note will always be attached to the appointment that it reflected, won't it?
Yes, it will. And thinking of that question as a clinic owner or maybe a practice manager whose job it is, whose role it is to kind of keep an eye on that, one nice thing that we have, again, this is a new feature since last time I was here, we've got this dashboard view for each practitioner.
Yeah.
And you see we've got this little dashboard view to look back and see if there are any notes that haven't been started, so any appointments that exist in this practitioner's diary where there's no clinical note that's actually linked to the appointment at all, any that are currently in draft, and then showing all that have been signed. So we can see Michael here is doing all right. He's signed all of his notes in that date range. And there are ways that you can kind of filter down to view exactly which appointments don't have notes or which practitioner hasn't signed specific
We're probably
notes.
not going to get the chance for you to go through much more because we've got quite a few questions here. We've only got 10 minutes left in our time. Let me just turn to a couple of others. Could you use Jane to manage diary and reminders and accounts, but still not use it for notes and stick to paper?
Oh yeah, totally. Like there's, similar to you said before with the mobile phone, we're not going to force you to use the mobile phone. If you don't want to use Jane for clinical notes, that's absolutely up to you. If you decide at some point to transition to clinical notes, I'll just demonstrate because I'm not sure I showed it very clearly before. You will always have the option. So there's a files area for each patient's profile, drag and drop, scan them in from your device, even take a photo and upload it directly to Jane, and then make that transition and have that.
Do you know, I'm one of those people who, way back in the day, so probably 10 years ago or something like that, I was thinking, I'm never going to use this. I don't want to be sitting tapping at a computer while the patient's in the room and so on. And then I realised just how much more convenient it is to have all the notes on an electronic system rather than filing cabinets full of paper dropping out of paper covers and things like that. And what's more, I could read them when I look back at them. I could read other people's notes as well.
Yeah.
So, but okay, that's good. Trev says he switched to Jane app some years ago and it's been and remains brilliant. Now, here's one. You're going to like this question.
Okay.
When you showed us the integrations a moment ago, it had MailChimp and then it had PhysioTrack.
Yes.
Now, as you know, I think most people in this country in osteopathic and chiropractic clinics are probably using Rehab My Patient or perhaps another system, but I don't know about PhysioTrack. So does that mean that anyone who is using, let's say Rehab My Patient, has now got to switch to a different exercise program?
If you'd like it to work and be fully integrated with Jane, yes. The only option we currently have is PhysioTrack in the UK, in North America. It is the only option that we have. I know we do have, and I'm sure you know, we have clinics who use Rehab My Patient alongside Jane and just don't integrate the two systems. I will say that we're very aware of the desire for an integration with Rehab My Patient from lots of our UK clinics.
So what happens then? How do the users tell Jane that they need this particular function in the software?
Yeah, so that's a very, very good question.
It's almost as though we had planned it, isn't it? It's almost as though I saw this before we went on air and thought that was
it
a
is,
very cool
right?
thing.
So we have this feature request so anyone who signed into any Jane account, they'd see their name in the top right corner. They can click to access this feature request area. What this allows us to do is firstly see features the team are actively working on at the moment, so new features we've completed, things currently in progress, and planned releases for the future. Rehab My Patient is not on there at the moment, and then this feature request list, if I search for Rehab My Patient, you'll see we've had a few people request that integration. What I would say is for anyone who is currently using Jane who would like the integration, please go on here, add a little vote to this request. So just tap that little up arrow, add a comment and let us know. For anyone who's maybe considering using Jane, who this might be a deal breaker, like, nope, we absolutely need that integration. If you are able to get in touch with us, just send us an email and say, we need Rehab My Patient.
And if they want to get in touch with you, where do they send their email?
So if they want to get in touch with me directly, it's jamie@jane.app. Otherwise, they can send it to support@jane.app, and that'll come through to our UK support team. But I would say make as much noise as possible about the need for this integration, and it's something that the more noise, the more we hear from our customers that it's something that's needed.
What do you gain from it being integrated with Jane? Does that just simply mean that Jane keeps a record of what you've sent in your notes?
Yes, I suppose the main thing's convenience with a lot of things. So if I'll select a random patient here in our demo site. Do you see we have this extra tab for PhysioTrack along here?
Right.
So let's say I, as a practitioner, maybe I've built some custom exercise programs in my PhysioTrack app. I wouldn't need to navigate away from Jane to open PhysioTrack or Rehab My Patient, create an exercise program and then assign it and then come back to Jane. It's all going to be integrated directly to Jane. And it allows you to assign exercise programs and kind of keep track of them directly from.
I know we've had Tim Allardyce on the show a few times. Tim is, of course, the guy behind Rehab My Patient, and actually, I think Tim is actually watching this show, probably with an interest himself in whether Jane integrates with Rehab My Patient. So, but I take it from what you said there that when we've got, I think there are about 17 requests for.
I believe so. Yes.
3,000 for something else below it.
That's right.
You can tell which one's going to. 3,500 to text patients from Jane. Which you said it can do anyway.
Yes, I'm not sure what the difference is with. In fact, this is for me to check afterwards. I guess it's a different type of text messages.
Votes, it's going to get the attention of the development
Yes, but definitely, please keep asking us any email that comes in, even if you're not a Jane customer. Mention that desire for Rehab My Patient.
Let's get back to some of these.
Yeah.
Oh God, this one's been called Sweet Hello. I can't believe anyone gave themselves that name, but Sweet Hello says, how does Jane app help us take patient card payments in clinic?
Awesome question. So we have a direct payment integration, our favorite topic now. We brand it as Jane Payments, so that's what we refer to it as. The company we integrate with is called Stripe. I'm not sure how familiar people may be with Stripe, but they're an enormous payment processor that they work across every sector. Pretty much everyone these days uses
switched to Stripe. We didn't rehearse this, but we switched to Stripe in my clinic from WorldPay, I think it was. And the difference is, it's the difference between PPS and Jane. You know, everything is just so good.
Yes, and so we integrate with them. We brand it as Jane Payments. What it allows you to do, which is just really, really nice, is if you offer online booking as a clinic, you'll have the option to set these different payment policies for online booking. So our default in our demo site is just no payment requirements, but you would have the option to say you'd like to request a deposit to secure a booking. So anyone booking online must pay a deposit amount that you set, or you can have a different rule for maybe existing patients don't need to pay, but a brand new patient you've never seen before, you may want to require a small deposit to secure those bookings, for example. Yeah. So it allows you to capture those payments up front. You can also send payment links after appointments for patients as well, and they have an online portal through which they can pay any outstanding balance on their account.
I'll tell you what, mate, one of the things it may be a personal glitch in my system, but I have never liked taking money from patients in clinic. I always think it breaks down that barrier, the relationship between the practitioner and the patient. And I mentioned this to somebody the other night when we were talking about treatment plans and so on, and he said it was possibly my own phobia rather than anybody else's. But I do think the fact that the payment card can be saved in the software, and you can just say to the patient, "Is it okay if I just take payment from your existing card?" That to me is a much friendlier transaction than get your wallet out and hand over the sticky £5 notes. And I love it. And I'm sure Jane isn't the only package that does automatic payments. Everybody else will do that as well. But it's a huge attraction to me in using an online system rather than the physical one. And of course it takes the weight off receptionists having to do all that as well. Yeah, and you can do all those booking the next appointment at the touch of a button in your
Absolutely, and I think that's another one of those things that during the pandemic, contact-free has become huge, and a lot of people have become way more comfortable with that idea of just charge the card.
So let's see if we've got time for a few more. Rhino, Rhino, might be his name, I don't know. Does the software allow you to do a clinic audit? Now there is a great question. Present in a pie chart the type of patients you're seeing, the conditions being treated and the treatment being undertaken. It's a great question because osteopaths particularly are required to do this sort of thing. And so can it?
So yes, kind of at the moment, depending on what it is you would like to audit. So the way that Jane works at the moment, and I wish I could demonstrate these new features, but they require live data, and this is a demo site. The way that Jane works at the moment with a lot of our reports, for example, you would say we want to view the different types of appointments we've had booked in over the past few months. You would come in, you would set a few different parameters along the top, and Jane's going to say, cool, this is everything you've asked for in a great big list. A new set of features I really wish I could demonstrate. We call it analytics, and we've got a whole new bunch of reports that allow you to report on very specific things. So like clinic, it's going to be so much better if I could show what this looks like rather than just describe it.
Could you send us a demo video and I can send that to people?
Yes, absolutely. I will do. I'll include. I think we've got a PDF that shows the different reports and what that does. If you let me have that,
I can just share it with people.
Yes, that would be awesome. I'll send that over afterwards because it's very, very powerful stuff, and it allows you to dig down into different types of appointments over time, and you can view lots of different stats on kind of clinic performance and practitioner performance.
Brilliant. And we are less than a minute away from our closing time. So
okay.
what are your What are your final takeaway points on online systems for people?
I'd say if it's something that you're really unsure about and there's zero obligation to sign up with Jane at all, this demo site that I'm using, we are more than happy to send out this username and password for people so they can test our system out. It doesn't need to be Jane that you sign up for, but just try it and play around with some fake patients, fake treatment notes, and just get a feel for how that works. And that might be a way to kind of bridge that gap and decide if it's something you'd be comfortable with.
Presumably it's worth looking at some other systems as well and taking
I'd say so, yeah, it's always a good idea. Always
and take some feedback from others. Yes. In my clinic we're always very happy to tell people what we think of Jane, but then of course our experience is solely Jane and PPS and there's no comparison between those two. Jamie, thanks. It's been brilliant to have you back in again.
Yes,
it's always a treat talking to you. Such an enthusiastic character. I
Thank you.
So, and if you can send me that PDF, I'll get it.
I will do, certainly will do.